I want to take you guys back to week 2 when we talked about thesis statements, and I said that different papers require different types of thesis statements. Well, today I want to talk to you about the type of thesis statement that you'll need for your literary analysis. The first thing that you want to remember when writing your literary analysis is you want to consider your purpose. Your purpose is going to dictate the message that you put forth and the expectations your audience is going to have for you. So the purpose of a literary analysis is to examine closely one of your short stories to understand its message, interpret its meaning, appreciate the techniques, or understand the historical or social context. What's a thesis statement again? Well, a thesis statement, a strong, solid thesis statement, is the backbone of your paper. It's the sexiest part. And it needs 3 things in order to be solid and strong. And I don't mean the XYZ list, but I mean the topic, the stance, and the so what. All of those things are necessary for your thesis statement. So for your literary analysis thesis, your thesis is going to be a statement that provides the subject and overall interpretation of the text. It's your personal interpretation based on your reading. For a literary analysis, your major thesis has to relate to the theme of the work and suggest how this theme is revealed by the author. In other words, it's also got to be arguable. What theme is developed? What is the author saying about something in that work? And what literary element is used to reveal that theme? It also has to be arguable. What I mean is, don't state the obvious. For example, Shakespeare uses imagery in Hamlet. That's not an arguable statement, that's an obvious one. Instead, you could say that Shakespeare uses weather imagery in Hamlet to display the moods of the characters. That's something that's more substantial, more original, and more arguable. Your thesis statement should demonstrate some new understanding of the literary work. It must have you bring something new. And what I mean by that is not obvious. And you want to state this new understanding in the form of an assertion. An assertion is an interpretation about a general subject like life, relationships, gender, class, something that you think the author is making through some element like character, theme, symbol, setting, point of view, etc. So where to start? How do I go about making this thesis statement? For the sake of argument, I'm going to use Tim O'Brien as for the example right here. So O'Brien makes a point about, well, what general subjects does O'Brien talk about? One of them is war, okay? The specific point he makes is that war has damaging and lasting effects. And then you want to refine it in an arguable claim. In a nutshell, your thesis needs to have the title, the author, whatever theme that you interpret, whatever meaning you take, and the literary device that the author uses to achieve that message. So your thesis statement is going to tell me what the author does, how the author does it, and why. So what? I have a little formula here. It looks a little confusing, but if you look at the formula and then you look at my examples, I think it'll make better sense. I don't think that there's like a one fit formula that works for everybody, but if you look at these, it's going to give you the tools that you need to create a thesis statement of your own. So you want to have the title of the work, the author, an active verb, something that the author does, and the point that you're trying to make. Or you can look at the author in the work title and some sort of analysis verb, something that the author does to a topic, and then a conclusion verb like reveal, show, whatever, etc., the theme. So if you look at my examples right here, in Where Are You Going? Where Have You Been? Joyce Carol Oates disrupts the boundaries between fantasy and reality through the characters of Connie and Arnold Friend to question the real nature of people. So if you look, I've got my title, my author, my verb, something that the author does. What does the author do? Well, she disrupts the boundaries between fantasy and reality. And then she does that through the characters. How does she do it? Well, through the characters Connie and Arnold. Why does she do it? Because she wants us to question the real nature of people. Another example, in The Thing in the Forest, Byatt explores the power of perception through her use of symbolism, revealing the complexities of truth. Well, The Thing in the Forest, there's my title. There's my author. What does the author do? Well, she explores the power of perception. How does she do that? Through her use of symbolism. Why does that matter? Well, because it reveals the complexities of truth. So you've got to answer what the author does, how the author does it, and why it matters. Another example, in The Things They Carried, the objects each man carries are coping mechanisms, or a coping mechanism. O'Brien develops the significance of these individual burdens to emphasize a person's inability to maintain humanity while handling the realities of war. Well, what does O'Brien do? He develops the significance of these individual burdens. Well, how does he do that? Through the objects or the symbols that each man carries. Why does he do that? He does that to emphasize a person's inability to etc., realities of war. So those are the elements that you need for your thesis statement, and that's what a literary analysis thesis statement should look like. I have some helpful tips for you when coming to write your literary analysis. I don't want you guys to get so stuck on coming up with the perfect thesis right away. In other words, I don't want you to marry yourself prematurely to a thesis. Instead, I would rather you guys think about the literary element that you want to explore. So are you going to look at character? Are you going to look at setting? Are you going to look at symbol, point of view, conflict, whatever the case may be? What literary element are you going to explore? Then you want to think about the theme or the point you think the author is trying to make through that literary element. Once you do that, then you can go back and familiarize yourself with the text and choose your evidence to prove your point about the theme. And I want you guys to take particular heed to this third one when I say familiarize yourself with the text. You're not going to get away with not reading these stories at least 2 times. Because the reason that that's important is because you want to make sure that your quotes are appropriate and they match what you're trying to say. If you don't read, you're not going to do yourself any favors when it comes to writing the analysis. So, yes, that's my point. You got to read. And then once you've gotten your evidence, you've thought about your element, you've thought about the point that you think the author's trying to make, you've got your evidence, because if you don't have evidence, you don't have a paper. So find your evidence, and then you can develop a potential thesis statement and go and work on that first draft. Um, then, after you've done your first draft, go back and read through it, and then do some revisions to that statement if it's necessary. Because I'll tell you, it's easier to go through and change your thesis to match your paper than it is to rewrite your whole paper, if that makes sense. So, I'd come up with a tentative thesis statement, one that you think is going to work. Have your literary element in mind, your theme in mind, and your evidence in mind. Then work on your paper and then revise the thesis statement if necessary. So, moving forward, looking at your thesis statements, I would welcome you guys to email me, come to my office hours, ask me questions. I am the thesis whisperer. I can help you come up with a thesis statement for your paper. Just let me know these two things and I'll help you figure it out. So if you have any questions, if you want me to help you work on your thesis, let me know. Take a look back at the checklist of is my thesis statement sexy? And I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for your literary analysis.